Chapter 4, Section 1, Part 2. Please make sure to have open your Google Doc through the Google Classroom to make sure to complete and submit for homework as you view this video. Suggestion would be to, as you watch the video, when you come across an answer, pause the video and fill in your answer. When we last left off, we were discussing how the majority of people in New England were farmers, subsistence farmers, and did not make too much money from their farm, but others did make a lot of money from the sea. So this is where we're going to pick up with the Atlantic trade. So New England settlers engaged in three types of trade. First was the trade with other colonies. Second was the direct exchange of goods with Europe. And the third type of trade was the triangular trade. The triangular trade was the name given to the trading route with three stops. For example, a ship might leave New England with a cargo of rum and iron. In Africa, the captain would trade his cargo for slaves. Slaves then endured the horrible Middle Passage to the West Indies, also known as the Caribbean Islands, where the slaves were exchanged for sugar and molasses. Traders then took the sugar and molasses back to New England. There, the colonists would use the molasses to make the rum, and the cycle started all over again. New England won enormous profits from this trade, and England wanted to make sure that it received parts of those profits. So the English government began to pass the Navigation Acts in 1651. The Navigation Acts had four major provisions designed to ensure that England made money from its colonies' trade. Number one, all shipping had to be done in English ships or ships made in the English colonies. 2. Products such as tobacco, wood, and sugar could be only sold to England or to other English colonies. 3. European imports to the colonies had to pass through English ports. And finally, number 4, English officials were to tax any colonial goods that were not shipped to England. But even after the passage of the Navigation Acts, England had trouble controlling colonial shipping. Merchants ignored the acts whenever possible. Smuggling, the importing or exporting of goods illegally, was common. England also had a great difficulty of preventing pirates, like the legendary Blackbeard, from interfering with colonial shipping. So since we just mentioned Blackbeard, here's a strange but true on Blackbeard. Here you can see a few artist renditions of what Blackbeard may have looked like. Of all the pirates who attacked colonial ships, Blackbeard was the most famous. He was a fearsome man known to stick matches in his hair to light up his face during a battle. But Blackbeard's pirate career finally came to an end in 1718 when Virginia's governor sent an expedition against him. Nearly half of the expedition's men died in the key battle. Blackbeard himself did not fall until he had suffered nearly 25 wounds, and before sailing back to port, the sailors cut off his head and put it on the front of their ship. African Americans in New England. There were few slaves in New England. Slavery simply was not economical in this region of small farms. Also, because the growing season was short, there was little work for slaves during the long winter months. Farmers could not afford to feed and house slaves who were not working. Even so, some New Englanders in larger towns and cities did own slaves. They worked as house servants, cooks, gardeners, and stable hands. In the 1700s, slave owners seldom had enough room to house more than one or two slaves. Instead, more and more slave owners hired out their slaves to work on the docks or in shops or warehouses. Slave owners sometimes allowed their slaves to keep a portion of their wages. Occasionally, some enslaved persons were able to save enough to buy their freedom. In fact, New England was home to more free blacks than any other region. A free black man might still become a merchant, sailor, printer, carpenter, or landowner. Still, white colonists did not treat free blacks as equals. Changes in Puritan society. The early 1700s saw many changes in New England society. One of the most important was the gradual decline of the Puritan religion. There were a number of reasons for this decline. One reason was that the drive for economic success competed with Puritan ideas. Many colonists, especially those who lived along the coast, seemed to care as much about business and material things as they did about religion. One observer had this complaint: Boston is so conveniently situated for trade, and the genius of the people are so inclined to merchandise that they seek no other education for their children than writing and arithmetic. One observer in 1713 quoted in A History of American Life. Another reason for the decline of the Puritan religion was the increasing competition from other religions. Baptists and Anglican established churches in Massachusetts and Connecticut, where Puritans had once been the most powerful group. Anglicans are another name for the Church of England. Political changes also weakened the Puritan community. In 1691, a new royal charter for Massachusetts guaranteed religious freedom for all Protestants, not just Puritans. The new charter also granted the vote based on property ownership instead of church membership. This put an end to the Puritan Church's ability to control elections. To the south of New England were the Middle Colonies, which developed in quite different ways, as the next video will show. We've come to the end of our section. You should be able to answer a few questions on top of making sure your guided reading through your Google Doc is complete. First question you should be able to answer. How did most people in New England earn a living? 2. Why did England pass the Navigation Acts? And 3. What factors led to the decline of the Puritan religion in New England? Finally, what advantages might there be in living near other people in small towns, such as the people did in New England? Think about transportation options that were available to the colonists at the time. And also think about why shopkeepers would choose to open a business in a town versus out in the country. Once again, please make sure that your guided reading questions have been completed through your Google Doc and you submit through the Google Classroom. And we will see you in class tomorrow.